Good morning. Thank you, Kelly. How many watched the debates last night? A few. Okay, well, since I'm going first, I get to decide how the program's run now. Kelly had asked for me to come up and give a little talk here. I had prepared about an hour presentation, and then he told me I had 20 minutes. And he wanted me to talk more about some of our initiatives and what we're doing at DBSi than what I had prepared. So I'm going to get started here. Scotty, we need more power. And Captain, the engines can't take it anymore. And what's your analysis, Spock? Maximum fascination, Captain. We're running out of power in data centers today, okay? And we can't use a bicycle hooked up to our PC and create green power for our computers. Gartner predicts that within the next 12 to 18 months, organizations will have to make a major change in accommodating the heating and cooling challenges in the data center. Another industry source says that most data centers will be obsolete within 2 years. This has especially been prevalent in healthcare. Issues with most data centers today is a lot of these data centers that we're dealing with within the healthcare community were built back in the 1980s or the 1990s. A lot of them were built with what we call a Tier 1 infrastructure. There's a Tier 1 through Tier 4. A Tier 4 would be your most highly redundant data center, and a Tier 1 provides basically a generator and some UPS backup. Many of the data centers are running out of power and cooling, and a lot of them, there's either no raised floor or the raised floor heights are 6 to 12 inches, and they can't cool dense cabinets today. We've got low ceiling heights. We've run into a lot of data centers that are in basements of the building because you're the least profitable part of the hospital. You're a cost center, right? And they want to put you where they can not make money. So the e-pharmacy, MRI suites, CAT scan suites, that's taking the space in the hospital. A lot of data centers have their crack units or their computer room air conditioning units located in the wrong space within the data center to cool correctly. And we're learning a lot more today on how to cool data centers. And we see a lot of the space being wasted because we can only fill our cabinets up with 1/4 of the equipment due to power and cooling. I even have a hospital that has a McDonald's above their data center. So think about the deep fryers, the food, the kitchen, the fire risk that they have above their data center, and they're very cognizant of it, but that was the only space left in the hospital to put them. Problems with expanding a data center, okay? We like to say it's like performing open heart surgery on a patient while they're alive. Not alive, while they're not under anesthesia. You know, they're awake. That's the word I wanted to use. Okay? So we're going to do open heart surgery on our data center. Everything's got to keep operating day in and day out, and the contractors can't be in the way. We find out with expanding a data center is typically there's no space in the building anymore, and there's no power or cooling infrastructure. There's either generators have to go on the roof or generators have to be located far away. Building floors can't handle the weight of the new equipment. We hear that more and more from engineers, that they can't put any more equipment in the data center because the floor can't carry the weight, and a lot of companies aren't even aware of that. There's no additional utility power available to the building. Believe it or not, that our power system out there is strained to the limits in a lot of areas. And some areas are rationing power where they can't provide power to new industrial parks coming in, let alone new buildings. There may be stringent city permit processes, especially in Philadelphia. It's very difficult to do anything now with generators. The fuel tanks now have to be in the basement. Generators have to be on the roof after 9/11. They don't want the diesel fuel on the roof of the buildings. So it becomes a problem. They're expensive to upgrade. You know, think about operating on that data center while it's live. Huge capital outlays. We're all dealing with the credit crunch over the last 12 months. It's going to become more difficult to get capital, and especially capital to build out a data center. And if you're in the lease space, which doesn't really pertain to the hospitals here, But in our commercial businesses, a lot of companies rent space for 5 years. They build a multi-million-dollar data center in that space, and then when they leave their lease, they've got to actually pull the data center out of the building. So they've got to get their money out of that data center within 5 years, and added insult, they've got to rip it out because the landlord doesn't want it in the building. Data center electrical power use. If we look at the data center, your servers and your storage are using about 26% of the power. So when we talk to a lot of businesses out there, we ask them how much power they're using. They go to their UPS and they tell us they're using 100 kW. But that 100 kW is only about 25% of the power that you're actually using. There's an additional cooling load for cooling, additional load for distribution, network, and just miscellaneous. Why do I talk about that? Electrical power, we measure power in watts. Okay? You hear about volts and amps, but the watt is the result of the volt times the amps. And anytime you use a watt, you create an output called heat. That's the result, or BTUs. So for every watt we generate that we consume, we produce heat. Back in the late, let's see, that would be the late 1990s, if you had an HP K-class server, which was pretty common in the healthcare area, that K-class server would consume about 9 100-watt light bulbs worth of electric. And the heat coming out of those light bulbs would equal a small handheld propane heater. So to give you a little idea what fit in that, half a cabinet there, 9 light bulbs, and 1 small heater. If we look at today's blade server cabinet, that blade server cabinet uses about 680 light bulbs worth of electric. 680 light bulbs. More importantly, take your home grill that you grill on and stick 8.9 of them in your data center for 1 cabinet. And that's the amount of heat that blade server cabinet's producing. It's pretty staggering. We have a hospital in our Valley Forge site. They've got over 1,200 blade servers in that data center. The cooling and power consumption is phenomenal. But we were able to reduce their floor space from 10,000 square feet down to about 2,000 square feet. But that tells you the significance of what we're talking about as we start moving forward and looking at the new technology that your hardware vendors and your software vendors are going to start talking to you about in the coming months. With our current traditional data center designs, if you have a raised floor, you typically have your power distribution under the floor. You've got your wire, your LAN distribution. We go into data centers that had mainframes and they still have their old bus and tag cables abandoned under the floor, taking up space. We talk about energy efficiency is we're pushing air underneath our floors and all that cable gets in the way of the efficiency of the air movement. And it actually strangles some of the air movement from getting to the cabinets.